My talk is about how you could use product thinking in the enterprise setting to build better products. But before we talk about what product thinking is and how you could apply it in the enterprise, let's take a quick look at what building products in too many enterprises today actually looks like. This is a process that I call hippos in the hopper. It often starts, like the name suggests, with hippos or highly paid person's opinions that typically get thrown over the wall or thrown over the fence to some kind of somewhat efficient technology engineering organization, right into the hopper, and they come out sometimes as nicely packaged features, but as soon as they make it to the market, users find it doesn't actually solve their problems, they don't want to use it, it tends to flame out, eventually leading to either the whole product or many features either being discarded or just left in disuse. And then we'll have another cycle of building a new replacement product that does almost exactly, that has exactly the same kinds of issues. There's quite a big investment waste, as you can imagine. Many of you may have experienced that in your own organizations, and that's where product thinking can help. So what is product thinking? So we often think of products in terms of features and functions, right? Because we have that software mindset to it. But what if we thought of products as one of four things, using a mindset of what customer and business problems are we looking to solve? What are the jobs to be done that we're going to support? What are the goals or outcomes that we need to enable? And what is the real life impact that we're shooting for? So instead of features and functions thinking about all of these things, that is the essence of product thinking. A core concept, you've heard about this before in the day, falling in love with the problems and not the solutions. So a product, what is a product? It's really something that's meant to fulfill an unmet need or solve a problem that your customers or the business actually has. Now, if you solve the wrong problem or you've misunderstood the problem entirely, what kind of risk are we looking at? So we often think of risk in terms of deadlines and what features will be out by a certain date and what's the quality. But much larger than that is building the wrong thing entirely. And product thinking is one way to make sure that you're not doing that. Now, of course, there are no guarantees. There's no way to know upfront, for sure whether what you're building is the right thing. But what we can do is bake in all through the product development process, talking to users, observing our customers, and giving them working software to use in real life settings as soon as possible. Before we talk about that a little bit more, I think it's important to look at the product that you're building. Where does it sit? What type of innovation does it qualify as? And be related to that, what is the kind of risk we're looking at? So we look at the simple model from IDEO. On the bottom axis is simply whether you are taking an existing or a new offering to the market. And on the left axis is whether it is an existing market that you're already serving or a new market. This could be geographic markets, these could be customer segments. So the simplest case is the incremental innovation case, where you're enhancing existing offerings that are already available to an existing market. Then the slightly more advanced cases of taking an existing offering to a new market, or taking a new offering to an existing market. And the highest level of risk probably is in the revolutionary innovation quadrant, where you're taking maybe an entirely new value proposition to an entirely new set of people. So the amount of time and effort you might want to spend in doing iterative discovery is probably the highest in the top two quadrants, because you're likely to be making lots of unvalidated assumptions about those customers and about the kinds of needs and problems you need to solve. So once we've understood the contours of the problem we should be solving, one key thing is to make sure that the vision for the product that you're building is framed right. Now, surprisingly, I don't know how many of you have experienced that, but I find many enterprises, product teams in enterprises seem to skip this step entirely. There's already a defined solution boundary to start with, and that's the starting point as opposed to understanding the problem and framing a vision. Now, I've often seen vision statements that will use maybe some vanity targets. So ours will be the leading mobile application among all US airlines. That's the vision statement for a mobile app. Or something that's very solution specific. So something that says, we will optimize and automate the new client onboarding process. And that's the vision statement. So deep into the details of what you'll be doing, as opposed to serving as some sort of inspiration, serving as the direction you want to take. So for example, what if you took an approach of saying, what would the world look like if we have solved this problem? So onboarding new clients 100% error-free in less than 6 hours. So vision statement like that, that's focused on the outcomes that you are trying to achieve and for who. So quickly to summarize that, vision statements that are not focused on vanity targets, not on specific solution capabilities, although they may mention what the solution might look like, but primarily focused on outcomes and on problem solved. And that brings us to the M word. So I think MVP is probably the most abused term in product development, maybe second to agile, right? The thing that it's one is the semantic diffusion of the word, so it's no longer carries the meaning that the lean startup movement originally intended for it to have. But in the enterprise setting, it turns out that there is a silent P in this term itself. And what this means is that you often end up with these bloated initial releases that have so many assumptions baked in that increase the level of risk and increase the chances that the investment being made is a waste. And it also becomes a binary. The last organization I worked with, it was almost a binary. Everything was MVP and post-MVP. And everyone knew that post-MVP was never going to get prioritized and make it into production. So tons of stuff was being thrown into the MVP just so that people could get all the things that they had always dreamed of. So what if instead of that approach, and you drop this idea of MVP or forget about what the term means, is it a releasable product or not, but instead took an approach of taking the thinnest slices of the capabilities that you're looking to build and actually putting them into the market, even if it is a small segment of the users that you had hoped to reach, even if it is a very limited set of functionality that you would have provided, but actually having this used in a real life setting and then building from there. Many of you may have heard of the skateboard to car metaphor, so essentially taking an approach like that. I found that that's something that can work even in the most traditional of enterprises once you get past that initial resistance to change. And a related concept to that is the notion of baking in user adoption right into the approach that you are taking from the beginning. Especially when it comes to enterprises building products for internal use, I've heard senior stakeholders say, oh, we don't need to worry about speaking to users, and we don't need to worry about whether they will use them because we will make them use the application, or we will make them use the product. And in one case, I even heard someone say, we will tie it to their salary incentives if they don't use it a certain number of times a day. So that's how we will ensure adoption happens. But all of us know, right, that we are at our most creative when someone is forcing us to do something we don't really want to do ourselves. So what could we do instead? One thing we could do is thinking about, as we think about these thin slices that we want to take into production, taking vertical slices through this layer cake. So instead of just thinking about what is the bare bones functional capability I can deliver in my first release, thinking about adding to that with what will make users trust that my product is reliable, what will make them quickly figure out how to use it without needing too much instruction, and what is it that will leave that first impression that gets them behind your product and makes them want to use it and not be forced to use it. So that's the approach with user adoption and thinking about that up front. And the last thing I'll leave you with is thinking about product roadmaps. I think this is extremely common where product roadmaps are conflated with project plans. So product roadmap has a list of features and bullet points with specific dates attached to them. An alternative approach we can take is to think of product roadmaps again in terms of goals and problems to solve. You may talk about some features that will help solve these, but the features and the dates are the lowest priority things you discuss. But again, allowing for that new learning that will happen as you go along the way. So to summarize, essentially, I'll leave you with the thought of focusing on the problems to solve and focusing on how you can keep learning about those problems as you go through the product development process. Thank you.